The first thing you learn about teaching high school physics is that teenagers test every law of motion, especially the one about objects at rest staying at rest. The second thing you learn is that life has a twisted sense of humor about timing. I was explaining this to my 8-year-old daughter, Emily, as we sat at the red light on Maple Street, watching some kid in a lifted truck rev his engine like he was preparing for NASCAR instead of a trip to McDonald's. "Daddy, why do people drive like idiots?" Emily asked, swinging her legs from the back seat of my 10-year-old Honda Civic. "Because they think physics doesn't apply to them, sweetheart. They think momentum is just a suggestion." She giggled. Emily always laughed at my terrible science jokes, which made her officially my favorite person in the world. The light turned green, and I eased forward, checking my mirrors out of habit. Delta Force training never really leaves you, even when you're driving carpool in suburban Maine instead of navigating hostile territory overseas. That's when I saw the black SUV in my rearview mirror, coming fast, too fast. My muscles tensed, old instincts firing. "Hold on, Em." The impact threw us forward like rag dolls. My seatbelt cut into my chest as the Honda lurched into the intersection. The sound of crumpling metal and shattering glass filled the air, followed by that terrible silence that comes after something goes very wrong. "Emily, you okay, baby?" "Daddy." Her voice was small, scared. "I think so." I twisted around to check on her. She looked shaken, but alert. The rear window had spiderwebbed, but held. My hands were already moving, checking for injuries, when I heard footsteps approaching my door. "Vincent Harper, right?" The voice was smooth, confident, familiar in the worst way. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I rolled down my window and found myself looking at Sebastian Kearns, my ex-wife's new boyfriend. Tall, perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that cost more than I made in a month teaching physics to ungrateful teenagers. His concerned expression looked about as genuine as a $3 bill. "Bash," I said, keeping my voice level. "Fancy meeting you here." "Terrible accident," he said, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. Then he leaned closer to my window, dropping his voice to a whisper. "Maybe you should consider leaving town for good, old man. For everyone's sake." My jaw clenched. 20 years of military training and 3 years of dealing with Lauren's manipulation had taught me to recognize a threat when I heard one. But before I could respond, Emily's voice cut through my anger. "Daddy, I can't feel my legs." The world tilted sideways. Everything else, Bash's smirk, the gathering crowd, my own fury, became background noise. I was out of the car and pulling open her door before my conscious mind caught up. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to get you checked out. You're going to be fine." But as I carefully lifted her from the back seat, her legs dangling limply, I wasn't sure I believed my own words. The ambulance arrived within minutes, followed closely by Lauren's pristine white BMW. She stepped out wearing her perfect PR executive outfit, her blonde hair styled to perfection despite the emergency. Even in crisis, Lauren Harper never missed an opportunity to look flawless. "What did you do to her?" she demanded, pushing past me to reach Emily. "I didn't do anything. We were rear-ended. By Sebastian's car, which means you must have done something to cause it." She turned to the paramedic. "My ex-husband has anger issues, military background. I've been worried about Emily's safety." I stared at her, genuinely amazed. Even after 3 years of divorce proceedings and custody battles, Lauren's ability to rewrite reality still caught me off guard. "Ma'am," the paramedic said patiently, "we need to focus on your daughter right now." At the hospital, I watched Lauren work the room like the professional she was. Concerned mother, tragic victim of circumstance, bravely holding together while her unstable ex-husband created chaos in their lives. She had the nurses eating out of her hand within minutes. "The police will want to speak with you," she told me in the hallway, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I told them about your drinking problem." "What drinking problem?" "The one you're going to develop if you don't start cooperating." She smiled, the same smile that had once made me think I was the luckiest man alive. "Sebastian has connections in this town, Vincent. Good connections. It would be a shame if Emily got caught in the middle of something unpleasant." Dr. Martinez emerged from Emily's room before I could respond. His expression was carefully neutral, which, in my experience, meant bad news delivered with professional courtesy. "The good news is, there's no permanent spinal damage," he said. "But there's significant swelling and bruising. Emily's going to need extensive physical therapy, and there's no guarantee she'll regain full mobility in her legs." Lauren immediately burst into perfectly timed tears. "My poor baby. How could this happen?" I wanted to point out that it happened because her boyfriend rammed into us at a red light, but the doctor was still talking. "She'll need to stay here for observation, at least a week. After that, she'll need a stable, supportive home environment for recovery." "Of course," Lauren said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue that had appeared from nowhere. "She'll stay with Sebastian and me. We have a much more suitable living situation." "Actually," I started, but Lauren cut me off. "Vincent lives alone in a small house with narrow doorways and stairs, hardly appropriate for a child who might need a wheelchair." The doctor looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with being dragged into domestic drama. "That's something you'll need to work out between yourselves. Right now, Emily needs rest." As the doctor walked away, Lauren stepped closer to me, close enough that no one else could hear. "I'm filing for full custody tomorrow," she whispered. "Sebastian's lawyer is very good, very expensive. You might want to start looking for a new place to live, somewhere far from here." She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking against the hospital floor like a countdown timer. I stood in that sterile hallway, surrounded by the smell of disinfectant and the sound of beeping machines, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not panic, not despair, something much more dangerous. If Lauren thought this was over, she was about to learn that some lessons can't be taught in a boardroom. 3 days later, I was sitting in Emily's hospital room, watching her try to move her toes with the fierce concentration of a kid who'd never met a challenge she couldn't overcome. The swelling had gone down, and she could wiggle them slightly, which Dr. Martinez called encouraging progress. I called it proof that Harper women were tougher than they looked. "Tell me again about the accident, Daddy," she said, not looking up from her feet. "Why do you want to know about that, sweetheart?" "Because Mom keeps saying it was your fault, but that doesn't make sense. You always stop at red lights." 8 years old, and she already had better critical thinking skills than most adults I knew. "You're right. I did stop at the red light. Someone hit us from behind." "Sebastian?" "Yeah, Sebastian." Emily frowned, still focused on her toes. "He doesn't like you very much." "No, he doesn't." "Why?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Why did Sebastian Kearns, successful real estate developer and Lauren's knight in shining armor, care enough about one washed-up physics teacher to orchestrate what was looking more and more like a deliberate attack? "I think he wants your mom all to himself," I said finally. "That's stupid. She's my mom, too." "Yeah, it is stupid." My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Jackie. "Heard about Em. Coming by after my shift, bringing coffee and inappropriate comments." Jackie worked as a nurse at Maine General, 3 towns over. She'd been my anchor since the divorce, the one person who never bought into Lauren's victim narrative. If anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it was her. She arrived 2 hours later with a large coffee, a bag of Emily's favorite cookies, and the kind of blunt assessment I'd been craving. "So, Sebastian Kearns rear-ended you at a red light, threatened you at the scene, and now Lauren's using Emily's injuries to grab full custody. Do I have that right?" "That's the short version." "And you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself instead of fighting back because—" I'm not feeling sorry for myself. Jackie raised an eyebrow. She had perfected that look during 15 years of dealing with difficult patients and one stubborn brother. Fine, I'm strategizing. Good. What's the strategy? I pulled out my phone and showed her the dash cam footage I'd been studying for 3 days. Watch the SUV in the background. See how it accelerates right before impact? That's not someone who suddenly realized they couldn't stop. That's someone who decided not to. Jackie watched the video twice, her expression growing darker. This is attempted assault with a vehicle. Why haven't you taken this to the police? Because Sebastian's got connections, remember? And the footage isn't quite clear enough to prove intent beyond reasonable doubt. A good lawyer would call it inconclusive. So, what's your plan? I need more evidence, and I need to understand what I'm really dealing with. Jackie leaned back in her chair, studying me with the same intensity she probably used to assess patients in the ER. You know what your problem is, Vincent? You're still thinking like a soldier. You're looking for a clean mission with clear objectives and rules of engagement. What should I be thinking like? A father whose daughter might never walk normally again because some entitled rich guy wanted to send a message. She was right, of course. Jackie usually was, which made her simultaneously the most valuable and most irritating person in my life. There's someone you should talk to, she said. Rufus Coleman. He owns that dive bar on Water Street, Murphy's Tavern. He's got his finger on the pulse of this town's gossip network. How do you know Rufus? He was a patient last year. Motorcycle accident. We got to talking during his recovery. Turns out he served in Afghanistan, same time you were overseas. Different unit, but he knows the type. I nodded. Military connections ran deep in small towns like ours. It was an invisible network of people who understood that sometimes the official story wasn't the whole story. One more thing, Jackie said as she prepared to leave. Emily's password for her tablet is Whiskers123, her old cat's name, plus her birthday month and year. Why are you telling me that? Because Lauren uses the same password for everything. Always has. She thinks it's clever because it relates to Emily, but she's too lazy to remember multiple passwords. I stared at my sister. How do you know Lauren's password habits? I helped her set up her email when you two were married, remember? She made me write it down because she was afraid she'd forget. Jackie, I'm not suggesting you do anything inappropriate with that information. I'm just sharing a random fact about your ex-wife's poor cybersecurity habits. After she left, I sat with Emily until visiting hours ended, then drove to Murphy's Tavern. The bar was exactly what I expected. Dim lighting, worn wooden floors, and the kind of comfortable shabbiness that came from decades of serving people who needed a place to drink without judgment. Rufus Coleman was behind the bar, a stocky man in his 50s with graying hair and forearms covered in military tattoos. He looked up as I approached, taking in my appearance with the quick assessment of someone who'd learned to size up strangers quickly. Vincent Harper, I said, extending my hand. Jackie's brother. Heard about your daughter. Sorry, man. Thanks. She said you might be able to help me understand some things about this town. Rufus poured 2 beers without asking what I wanted. Depends what you want to understand. Sebastian Kearns. What's his story? Rich boy with a mean streak and political ambitions. His daddy owned half the commercial real estate in town before he passed. Sebastian inherited everything, including the connections that keep certain people looking the other way when he gets creative with zoning laws. Creative how? Let's just say there are a lot of low-income housing projects that got mysteriously condemned right before Sebastian wanted to build luxury condos in those neighborhoods. I sipped my beer, processing this. What about his personal life? Divorced 3 years ago. Messy situation. His ex-wife claimed he was controlling, manipulative. She moved to California with their kids right after the settlement. Any idea why he'd have it in for me specifically? Rufus leaned against the bar, lowering his voice. Word is, he's been bragging about clearing obstacles for your ex-wife. Says she deserves better than being tied down by some loser teacher who can't provide for his family. The beer suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth. He's been talking about me? Not just talking, planning. He's been asking around about your habits, your schedule, where you go. Someone's been watching you, Vincent. I set down my beer, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Lauren wanting full custody. This was about Sebastian wanting to completely erase me from their lives. There's something else, Rufus said. Sebastian's got a regular poker game every Thursday night. Private room upstairs. High stakes, lots of drinking, lots of talking. The kind of environment where people say things they probably shouldn't. You suggesting I crash the party? I'm suggesting information is power. And right now you need all the power you can get. I finished my beer and left Murphy's Tavern with more questions than answers, but also with something I hadn't had before. A plan. Sebastian Kearns thought he could intimidate me into disappearing. He was about to learn that some people don't disappear quietly. The drive home took me past Lauren's new condo complex, a gleaming monument to Sebastian's real estate empire. As I slowed down at the traffic light, I saw them through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her third-floor unit. Lauren and Sebastian, sharing wine and what looked like a very intimate conversation. They looked happy, successful, untouchable. That was about to change. Thursday night found me parked across the street from Murphy's Tavern, watching well-dressed men filter into the back entrance for Sebastian's poker game. I'd spent the week doing homework, learning schedules, identifying faces, understanding the social ecosystem that Sebastian had built around himself. The guest list was impressive. City council members, the police chief, a state senator, and various business owners who'd benefited from Sebastian's development projects. It was a network built on mutual benefit and shared secrets, the kind of arrangement that kept small towns running smoothly for those who knew how to work the system. I wasn't planning to crash the party tonight. That would come later, when I had more leverage. Tonight was about reconnaissance and testing a theory Jackie had given me. Instead of going inside, I drove to Lauren's condo complex. The security was minimal, a keypad entry system that most residents probably ignored anyway. I parked in the visitor section and walked casually toward the building, looking like someone who belonged there. Lauren's unit was on the third floor, corner apartment with premium views and premium rent. The kind of place that required a certain income level to maintain, especially for a single mother whose PR firm had been struggling lately. I knew from our divorce proceedings that Lauren made decent money, but not luxury condo in the best part of town money, which raised interesting questions about how she was affording her new lifestyle. The building's Wi-Fi network was unsecured, a common oversight in upscale developments where residents assumed their neighbors were trustworthy. I connected my laptop and opened a browser, then navigated to Lauren's email provider. Jackie had been right about the password. Whiskers23 got me into Lauren's personal email account on the first try. What I found there was better than I'd hoped for. Lauren wasn't just dating Sebastian, she was actively collaborating with him on what they called the Vincent problem. Email chains going back 6 months detailed their strategy for removing me from Emily's life permanently. Sebastian thinks we need to be more aggressive, Lauren had written to her friend Monica. He's tired of dealing with Vincent's interference in our relationship. Says he knows how to handle men like him. Monica's response was equally illuminating. Just be careful. You don't want this to blow back on you if something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong. Sebastian has connections. He's handled difficult people before. I screenshotted everything, building a digital file that painted a very different picture than the one Lauren had presented to the hospital staff and social services. But the real treasure was buried deeper in her sent folder. Financial documents showing regular deposits from Sebastian's business account into Lauren's personal checking account. Large deposits, going back almost a year. Sebastian wasn't just Lauren's boyfriend. He was her financial backer. The condo, her car, Emily's private school tuition, even her legal fees for the custody battle. All of it funded by Sebastian Kearns, in exchange for what the emails made clear was an exclusive relationship and a promise to cut me out of Emily's life entirely. I was saving the last batch of emails when my phone rang. Jackie's name appeared on the screen. "Where are you?" she asked without preamble. "Doing research. Why?" "Because Sebastian Kearns just left his poker game early, and he looked upset. Rufus thought you should know." I glanced at my watch. It was barely 10 o'clock. Poker games usually ran until at least midnight, especially when they involved this much money and ego. "Any idea why he left?" "Someone got a phone call about 20 minutes ago. After that, the whole mood changed. Sebastian made his excuses and took off." I had a sinking feeling I knew what that phone call had been about. Someone had noticed unusual activity on Lauren's email account, or maybe Sebastian had security monitoring that I hadn't detected. "I need to go," I told Jackie. "Vincent, be careful. Whatever you're doing, don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that gets you arrested before you can help Emily." She had a point. I closed the laptop and headed back to my car, but I was already planning my next move. Sebastian had shown his hand by leaving the poker game early. That meant he was worried about something, which meant I was on the right track. The next morning, I visited Emily at the hospital with printouts of Lauren's emails hidden in a folder of her homework assignments. Emily was making progress with her physical therapy, but she was also asking more questions about why she couldn't go home with me. "Mom says your house isn't safe for someone with leg problems," she said, while working with the resistance bands her therapist had given her. "What do you think?" "I think Mom's been acting weird since the accident. She keeps asking me questions about you." "What kind of questions? Like, do you drink beer at home? And do you ever get angry? And have I ever seen you hit anything?" Emily paused in her exercises. "I told her you only drink beer when Uncle Tommy visits, and you only get angry at the TV when the Patriots lose, and the only thing I've ever seen you hit is your thumb with a hammer when you were fixing my bookshelf." I smiled, despite everything. Emily's honesty was going to be my secret weapon in this custody battle. "There's something I need to ask you, sweetheart, and I need you to tell me the truth." "Okay. Do you remember Mom's password for her computer? The one she uses for her email?" Emily's face brightened. "Whiskers, 123. It's the same password she uses for everything. She made me promise not to tell anyone, but you're not anyone. You're my dad." "That's right. And sometimes dads need to know things to keep their daughters safe." "Are you trying to keep me safe from something?" I looked at my 8-year-old daughter, this brave little girl who was working so hard to walk normally again after someone had deliberately tried to hurt us, and felt something harden in my chest. "Yeah, Em. I am." That afternoon, I put the first part of my plan into motion. I created an anonymous email account and sent Lauren's financial records to Sebastian's ex-wife in California, along with a note explaining that her ex-husband was using the same controlling tactics on his new girlfriend that he'd probably used during their marriage. Then I sent copies of the emails discussing the Vincent problem to Monica, Lauren's best friend and biggest gossip source, with a message suggesting that Lauren might not be as trustworthy as she appeared. Finally, I forwarded everything to Sebastian's business partner, Peter, with a note questioning whether Sebastian's personal vendettas were putting their business relationships at risk. I didn't expect immediate results. This kind of psychological warfare took time to develop, like cracks in a foundation that eventually brought down the whole structure. But I didn't have to wait long for the first signs of success. My phone rang at 7 that evening. Lauren's name appeared on the screen, and when I answered, her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "What did you do?" "I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Emily's doing better too." "Don't play games with me, Vincent. Someone's been spreading lies about Sebastian and me. Someone who has access to private information." "That sounds terrible. Have you considered calling the police?" There was a long pause. We both knew she couldn't call the police without explaining how someone had accessed emails that detailed her conspiracy to remove me from Emily's life. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's not." After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and Emily's homework folder, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. Lauren and Sebastian had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated their opponent. They thought they were dealing with a broken-down ex-soldier who taught high school physics because he couldn't handle anything more challenging. They didn't realize they were dealing with someone who'd spent 20 years learning how to identify enemy weaknesses and exploit them systematically. The war for Emily's future had officially begun. The first crack in Sebastian's armor appeared on Monday morning, delivered via a furious phone call from his business partner, Peter. I knew about the call because I was sitting in my car outside Sebastian's office building, watching him pace back and forth in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his third-floor conference room. Even from the street, his body language screamed crisis management. The conversation lasted 23 minutes. When it ended, Sebastian threw his phone across the room. Phase 1 was working. I drove to the hospital to check on Emily, who was making remarkable progress with her physical therapy. Dr. Martinez had upgraded her prognosis from uncertain to optimistic, which meant she'd likely regain full mobility with continued treatment. "Mom was here earlier," Emily said, as I helped her with her walking exercises. "She seemed upset about something." "Did she say what?" "Something about people spreading rumors." She kept checking her phone and making angry faces. Lauren's support network was cracking exactly as I'd hoped. Monica, her best friend and primary gossip conduit, had received copies of emails showing how Lauren really talked about her friends behind their backs. The revelation that Lauren considered Monica useful but not particularly bright had not gone over well. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you and Mom fighting about me?" I stopped walking and knelt down to Emily's eye level. This was the conversation I'd been dreading, but she deserved honesty. "Your mom and I disagree about some things, but you need to know that none of this is your fault, and both of us love you very much." "I know that, but I also know Mom's been lying about some stuff." "What makes you say that?" "She told the doctor that you have a drinking problem, but I've never seen you drink except for that one beer with Uncle Tommy. And she told Mrs. Patterson at school that you've been threatening her, but you don't even talk to her except about me." 8 years old, and Emily had better detective skills than most adults I knew. "Sometimes grown-ups say things that aren't exactly true when they're scared or angry," I said carefully. "Is Mom scared of you?" "I think she's scared of losing control of the situation." Emily nodded like this made perfect sense. "She doesn't like it when things don't go the way she planned." That was an understatement. Lauren's need to control every narrative, every outcome, every relationship had been one of the major factors in our divorce. She couldn't accept that some things, like other people's feelings and choices, were beyond her influence. My phone buzzed with a text from Rufus. "Your friend Sebastian was at the bar last night, drinking alone, asking questions about you." This was interesting. Sebastian was clearly feeling pressure from multiple directions, and people under pressure made mistakes. I texted back, "What kind of questions?" "Wanted to know about your military background. Specifically, what kind of training you had and whether you were the type to escalate situations." Sebastian was trying to build a case that I was dangerous, probably to support Lauren's custody grab, but his approach was clumsy, desperate. He was asking the wrong people in the wrong way, which meant he was operating outside his comfort zone. That afternoon, I received a call from Detective Gwen Morrison, an old friend from my pre-military days who'd stayed in touch over the years. "Vincent, I need to give you a heads up. Sebastian Kearns came to see me today. He's claiming you've been stalking him and Lauren." "That's interesting. Did he provide any evidence?" "Nothing concrete, but he's got connections in the department and he's pushing for a restraining order." I'd expected this move. Sebastian was trying to use the legal system to limit my ability to investigate and respond to his actions. Gwen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would stalk my ex-wife? Honestly, no. You're the kind of person who would plan something carefully and execute it efficiently. Stalking is sloppy and emotional, and you're neither of those things. Thank you. But Vincent, be careful. Sebastian's got influence in this town, and he's clearly feeling threatened by something. People with power and paranoia are dangerous combinations. After hanging up, I realized it was time to escalate my strategy. Sebastian was trying to paint me as unstable and dangerous, which meant I needed to demonstrate exactly the opposite, that I was calm, rational, and in control. That evening, I attended the monthly school board meeting where Lauren served as the parent representative for Emily's grade level. The meeting was held in the high school auditorium, the same place where I'd given presentations about physics demonstrations for the science fair. Lauren was sitting in the front row with Sebastian, both of them dressed like they were attending a business conference rather than a small-town school board meeting. When she saw me enter, her face went pale. I took a seat in the back and waited for the public comment period. When my turn came, I walked to the podium with a folder of documents and addressed the room in the same calm, professional tone I used when teaching. My name is Vincent Harper. I'm a physics teacher here at the high school, and my daughter Emily is a student at Riverside Elementary. I'm here tonight because I want to address some concerns about the safety and well-being of students in our district. I opened my folder and pulled out the dashcam footage I'd had printed as still images. 3 weeks ago, my daughter and I were involved in a traffic accident that left her hospitalized with serious injuries. The accident occurred when our vehicle was struck from behind while we were stopped at a red light. I displayed the images showing Sebastian's SUV approaching at high speed, clearly accelerating rather than braking. What concerns me is that this appears to have been a deliberate act, designed to intimidate me and harm my child. The driver of the other vehicle is Sebastian Kearns, who is currently in a relationship with my ex-wife and has been vocal about his desire to remove me from my daughter's life. The room was completely silent. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I'm not here seeking sympathy or revenge. I'm here because I believe our children deserve to be safe from adults who use vehicles as weapons to settle personal disputes. I'm requesting that the school board consider implementing additional safety measures around school pickup and drop-off areas, and that they be aware of situations where domestic conflicts might spill over into school environments. I returned to my seat without looking at Lauren or Sebastian. The damage was done. I'd presented myself as the reasonable, concerned parent, while subtly exposing their conspiracy to a room full of people who would spread the story throughout the community. During the drive home, my phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. "You think you're clever," she said when I answered. "I think I'm a father who's tired of being threatened and manipulated." Sebastian is furious. "You have no idea what you've just started." Actually, I have a very good idea. The question is whether Sebastian is smart enough to back down before this gets worse for both of you. He's not backing down, and neither am I. Then I guess we'll see what happens next. After hanging up, I sat in my driveway for several minutes, thinking about the conversation. Lauren's voice had carried a note I hadn't heard before. Genuine fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing control of the situation entirely. Sebastian had promised her that he could handle the Vincent problem quickly and quietly. Instead, he'd created a public spectacle that was drawing attention to their relationship and their tactics. The next phase of my plan would test just how much pressure their partnership could withstand. Sebastian's response came faster than I'd expected, and it was exactly the kind of overreach I'd been hoping for. Wednesday morning, I was served with a restraining order at school, in front of my first period physics class. The deputy sheriff was apologetic but professional, explaining that I was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Sebastian Kearns or Lauren Harper, except for scheduled visits with Emily at the hospital. My students watched the whole thing with the fascination teenagers reserved for adult drama that didn't directly involve them. "Mr. Harper," asked Jessica, one of my brighter students, "does this have something to do with that car accident you mentioned?" "Sometimes, Jessica, when people feel like they're losing control of a situation, they make desperate moves that end up backfiring spectacularly." "Is that physics?" "That's human nature. Physics just helps us understand the consequences." The restraining order was a tactical error on Sebastian's part. It made him look vindictive and controlling, especially coming so soon after my measured presentation to the school board. More importantly, it limited my movements, but not my ability to gather information or communicate with allies. During my lunch break, I called Rufus. "Heard about your legal troubles," he said. "Sebastian was celebrating at the bar last night. Bought drinks for everyone, talking about how he'd finally neutralized the threat." "Did he say anything specific?" "He was pretty drunk by the end of the night. Started bragging about how easy it was to manipulate the legal system when you had the right connections. Said you were just the first problem he'd solved for Lauren." "The first?" "Apparently there was some issue with her previous job. A supervisor who was asking too many questions about her expense reports. Sebastian made some calls, and suddenly the guy was transferred to a different department." This was useful information. Sebastian had a pattern of using his influence to eliminate obstacles, which meant there were probably other people who'd been on the receiving end of his pressure campaigns. "Rufus, I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves you accidentally overhearing conversations and remembering details that might be useful later." "I can do that. What am I listening for?" "Anything about Sebastian's business dealings, his relationship with Lauren, or his plans for dealing with me." That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor at school. Monica, Lauren's former best friend, was waiting by my car when classes ended. "I need to talk to you," she said without preamble. Monica was the kind of woman who thrived on social drama and insider information. She'd been Lauren's primary ally during our divorce, spreading carefully crafted stories about my supposed failures as a husband and father. Seeing her now, looking nervous and angry, told me that my strategy was working better than I'd hoped. "What can I do for you, Monica?" "You can explain why you sent me those emails." "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb. Someone sent me copies of conversations between Lauren and me, except they showed what Lauren was really saying about me behind my back." I waited for her to continue. "She called me useful, but not particularly bright. Said I was good for spreading information, but too stupid to realize I was being manipulated. That must have been hurtful. It was humiliating. But it also made me realize some things about Lauren that I should have seen earlier." Monica pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. "These are from the night of your accident. Lauren texting me before she even got to the hospital, telling me what story to spread on social media. She had the narrative planned before she knew how badly Emily was hurt." The messages were damning. Lauren had been crafting her victim story while her daughter was being loaded into an ambulance. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm tired of being used, and because Emily deserves better than parents who treat her like a chess piece in their personal war." Monica forwarded me the text messages, then walked away without another word. I sat in my car, reading through Lauren's calculated manipulation of the situation, and felt my resolve harden even further. That evening, I visited Emily at the hospital. She was scheduled to be discharged the next day, and the custody question still hadn't been resolved. Lauren was pushing for Emily to come home with her, while I was fighting for shared custody with adequate accommodations for Emily's recovery needs. "I heard Mom and Sebastian arguing yesterday," Emily said while we worked on her physical therapy exercises. "What were they arguing about?" "Sebastian was mad about something that happened at his work. He kept saying someone was trying to ruin his reputation. Mom told him to calm down, but he said he wasn't going to let anyone make him look weak. This was concerning. Sebastian was clearly feeling pressure from multiple directions, and his response was to double down on aggressive tactics rather than stepping back and reassessing. "Emily, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If Sebastian ever makes you feel uncomfortable or scared, I want you to call me immediately, even if Mom tells you not to." "Why would he make me scared?" "He might not, but sometimes adults who are angry about other things take it out on people who can't fight back." Emily nodded seriously. "Like bullies at school." "Exactly like bullies at school." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. Important information about your situation. A friend." I waited until I got home to check my email. The message contained a single attachment, a recording of Sebastian talking to someone on the phone, apparently recorded at Murphy's Tavern. Sebastian's voice was slurred with alcohol, but his words were clear enough. "The teacher's becoming a real problem. I thought the accident would scare him off, but he's fighting back. We might need to escalate things." The other voice was harder to make out, but I caught enough to understand that Sebastian was discussing options for permanently removing me from the situation. I saved the recording and immediately forwarded copies to Detective Morrison and to a lawyer friend who specialized in family law. Then I called Jackie. "I need you to do me a favor," I said. "Tomorrow, when Emily gets discharged, I want you to be there, as her medical advocate." "What's going on?" "Sebastian's getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I want Emily to have someone looking out for her who isn't emotionally invested in the custody battle." "Vincent, are you in danger?" "I don't think so, but I want to make sure Emily's safe while this plays out." The next morning brought news that changed everything. Sebastian's business partner, Peter, had filed a lawsuit dissolving their partnership, citing personal conduct incompatible with business interests. The local newspaper ran a small item about the dissolution, noting that Peter was moving his development projects to a different firm. Sebastian's carefully constructed network was falling apart, and he was running out of allies. That afternoon, as Emily was being discharged from the hospital, Lauren arrived with Sebastian and a new lawyer I didn't recognize. They were clearly planning to take Emily home with them, regardless of what the custody evaluation had recommended. But they hadn't counted on Emily having her own opinion about the situation. When Lauren announced that Emily would be staying with her and Sebastian, Emily looked directly at the social worker and said, "I want to go home with my dad." "Sweetheart," Lauren said, her voice tight with forced sweetness, "we've talked about this. Daddy's house isn't set up for someone who needs help walking." "I don't need that much help anymore," Emily replied, "and Daddy's house feels safer." The word safer hung in the air like a challenge. The social worker looked between Lauren and me, clearly trying to navigate a situation that had become more complicated than anyone had anticipated. "Emily," she said gently, "can you tell me why you feel safer with your father?" "Because Sebastian doesn't like me very much, and he gets angry when I talk about Daddy, and because Mom keeps asking me to say things about Daddy that aren't true." Lauren's face went white. Sebastian stepped forward, but Jackie intercepted him. "I think," Jackie said in her best professional nurse voice, "that Emily's had enough stress for one day. Maybe the adults should continue this conversation somewhere else." The social worker nodded. "I think that's a good idea. Emily, you're going to stay with your father tonight while we sort out the custody arrangement. We'll have another meeting tomorrow." As we left the hospital, Emily walking slowly but steadily beside me, I realized that the most important battle had just been won by an 8-year-old girl who'd decided she was tired of being treated like a pawn in someone else's game. But I also knew that Sebastian wasn't finished. Men like him didn't accept defeat gracefully, especially not from people they considered beneath them. The final confrontation was coming, and this time there wouldn't be any rules of engagement.